I never thought desperation would taste like champagne and smell like a man who owns half of Manhattan. When my brother's medical bills piled higher than hope, I did the unthinkable. I listed the only thing I had left to sell on a private auction site. Anonymous. Untraceable. One night, one price, one way out. But the faceless bidder who paid $2 million wasn't a stranger. He was Dominic Hale, my boss, the cold-blooded venture capitalist who barely acknowledged my existence in the boardroom. Now he stands in the penthouse suite I was sent to, looking at me like I'm both a business transaction and something far more dangerous. His eyes promise things I don't understand. His mouth curves with secrets that could destroy me. And when he speaks, his first words aren't what I expect. Did you really think I wouldn't know? Welcome to 15 Minutes Binge Romance, your new guilty pleasure. Here, we don't waste a single second. I drop you into the tension, the danger, and the bad decisions you know you'd never make, but love hearing about. Ready for your next binge? Good. Let's go. I should have realized the moment the bid hit 7 figures that something was wrong. No one pays that much for a first time. No one sane, anyway. But sanity left me 3 months ago when the hospital called and told me my brother had 2 weeks to decide between experimental treatment or hospice care. 2 weeks to choose between fighting or dying, and the only thing standing between him and a real chance was money. $2 million, to be exact. The kind of number that doesn't exist in my world, where I stretch paychecks to cover rent and ramen and pray my subway card has enough for one more swipe. So I went looking in the darkest corners of the internet, where girls like me go when hope runs out. The auction site was invitation only, encrypted, vetted. The kind of place that required 3 references and a verified identity before they'd even let you see the interface. I'd heard about it from a girl at a bar, her eyes glassy with too much wine and too many regrets, but also wearing a Cartier bracelet that could have paid my rent for a year. She told me the rules. Be honest about your inexperience, set your reserve price, and don't ask questions about the men who bid. They valued discretion above everything. They valued control. I set my reserve at 1 million. I uploaded one photo, nothing identifying, just the curve of my collarbone and the edge of my jaw. Enough to intrigue, not enough to recognize. I wrote 3 sentences, 24. Never been touched. One night. Your terms, cash up front. The bids came in slowly at first. Then faster. By the time the auction closed, the number on my screen made my hands shake so badly I dropped my phone. $2 million. The winner would contact me with instructions. I had 24 hours to accept or decline. If I declined, the money went to the second highest bidder and I'd be banned from the platform. If I accepted, the transaction was binding. Legal, somehow, in the gray spaces where contracts and consent blurred into something I didn't want to examine too closely. I accepted. The instructions arrived the next morning while I was making coffee in the break room at Hale Capital, trying to pretend my life wasn't imploding. The message was brief: Peninsula Hotel. Suite 2804. 8 p.m. tonight. Wear something you can take off easily. The money is already in escrow. My phone nearly slipped into the sink. I worked as an executive assistant at Hale Capital, a venture firm so prestigious that just having it on my resume opened doors. My job was to manage calendars, field calls, and stay invisible while men in suits decided which startups lived or died. I was good at being invisible. I'd perfected it over 2 years of working for Dominic Hale, a man whose reputation preceded him like a storm warning. Ruthless. Brilliant. Cold enough to make winter look warm. He'd spoken to me directly maybe 10 times, and each interaction lasted under a minute. I wasn't even sure he knew my name. I was just the assistant, the girl who made sure his coffee was black and his meetings ran on time. The girl who existed in the periphery of his world, never quite in focus. I left work early, claiming a migraine. No one questioned it. I took the subway home and stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what you wear to sell yourself. I settled on a black dress, simple and fitted, with a zipper down the back. Easy access. The thought made my stomach turn. I almost didn't go. I stood outside the peninsula for 10 minutes, watching people flow in and out of the golden doors, all of them belonging to a world I was only visiting. But then I thought about my brother, about the way he'd looked at me last week when I promised him we'd find a way. I thought about the hope in his eyes, the kind of hope that's more painful than despair because it requires you to believe in impossible things. So I walked inside. The elevator ride to the 28th floor lasted a lifetime. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like a stranger, pale, wide-eyed, dressed for a date with the devil. When the doors opened, I followed the corridor to suite 2804 and knocked before I could change my mind. The door swung open. And Dominic Hale stood on the other side. For a moment, neither of us moved. My brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. My boss. The man who barely looked at me in the office was standing in front of me now, dressed in black pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not cold. Not distant. Hungry. "Miss Holloway," he said, his voice low and smooth as smoke. Right on time. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The room behind him was all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern luxury, but all I could see was him. All I could feel was the sudden, terrible understanding that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. "You," I whispered. "You're the winning bidder." "Yes." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. "Come in, Evelyn. We have things to discuss." I didn't move. My legs had forgotten how to work. "This is a mistake." I didn't know I wouldn't have. Wouldn't have what? Sold yourself to your boss. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Or are you more concerned that I know exactly who you are and what you're worth?" The words hit like a slap. I turned to leave, but his hand caught my wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop me. The contact sent electricity racing up my arm, and I hated myself for noticing. "Let me go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Not until you hear me out." His thumb pressed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. 5 minutes. Then you can leave if you want. But the money's already been transferred to your brother's hospital. The treatment starts Monday. The world tilted. What? He released me and walked into the suite, leaving the door open. An invitation or a trap, I couldn't tell. After a moment, I followed him inside, my heels silent on the plush carpet. The suite was enormous, all clean lines and expensive furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. Dominic stood by the windows, his silhouette dark against the city lights, and I realized I'd never really looked at him before. Not like this. At work, I'd trained myself to glance away, to treat him like a force of nature rather than a man. But now I couldn't stop looking. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that belonged on a classical statue, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry, saved from being too beautiful by a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. His hair was dark and pushed back, like he'd run his hands through it too many times. And his eyes, God, his eyes were the color of winter seas, cold and deep and dangerous. "You paid the hospital," I said, finding my voice. Before the auction was even over," he finished. "I placed my bid 3 minutes after yours went live. I've been monitoring that site for months, Evelyn. Waiting." I slid down my spine. "Waiting for what?" "For you to need me." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I didn't want to unpack. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the room's perfect temperature. "That's insane," I said. "You don't even know me. I know you take your coffee with cream and 2 sugars, even though you tell everyone you drink it black because you think it makes you seem more professional. I know you arrive 30 minutes early every day and leave 30 minutes late. I know you've been stealing Wi-Fi from the office to save money on your internet bill. I know you visit your brother every Sunday at Memorial Sloan Kettering and you always bring him crossword puzzles, even though he never finishes them." He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "I know you, Evelyn. Better than you think." The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. "You've been watching me." "Yes." No apology. No justification. Just brutal honesty delivered like a business fact. "Why?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. He moved toward me, each step deliberate and predatory. I should have backed away. I should have run. But I stood frozen as he stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke. "Because you're the only thing in my life I can't acquire," he said. "The only variable I can't control. Do you have any idea how maddening that is for a man like me? So you bought me." Anger finally cut through my fear, sharp and clarifying. "You turned my desperation into a transaction." "I gave you what you needed," he corrected, his voice dropping even lower. "Your brother gets his treatment. You get to keep pretending you didn't sell yourself to a stranger. And I get one night with the woman who's been driving me insane for 2 years. One night," I repeated numbly. "That was the agreement." He reached up and traced my jaw with one finger, the touch featherlight and devastating. "Unless you want to renegotiate." I should have pulled away. Should have slapped him. Should have done anything except stand there while his touch set my skin on fire and my mind reeled with the impossibility of this situation. My boss. The man I'd spent 2 years treating like a distant, untouchable deity was looking at me like I was something he wanted to consume. "I don't understand," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "You could have anyone. Why this? Why me?" His hand dropped, and for just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something almost vulnerable. "Because everyone who comes to me wants something," he said quietly. "Money, connections, power. They perform, they pretend, they angle for position. But you look at me like I'm just a man. Sometimes you look at me like I'm not even there. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How valuable?" The confession stunned me into silence. This was Dominic Hale, the man Forbes called the Ice King of Wall Street, admitting to something that sounded almost like loneliness. "This is insane," I said again, but the words had lost their conviction. "Probably." He stepped back, giving me space I wasn't sure I wanted. "But the money's already transferred. Your brother's treatment starts Monday. So you have 3 choices, Evelyn. 1. Walk away right now, keep the money, and we pretend this never happened. 2. Stay for the night we agreed on, fulfill the contract, and go back to your life. 3. He paused, his eyes searching mine. "Stay because you want to. Not because of the money or the auction or your brother. Stay because you're curious about what happens when you stop being invisible." My heart hammered against my ribs. "And if I stay, what does that make me?" "Mine," he said simply. "For tonight. Or longer, if you choose option 3. The world narrowed to just us, to the space between his words and my decision. I thought about my brother, about the treatment that would save his life. I thought about the auction, about how I'd already crossed a line I could never uncross. But mostly I thought about the way Dominic was looking at me, not like an assistant or a transaction, but like a woman who held something he desperately wanted. "I want to renegotiate," I heard myself say. His expression didn't change, but something blazed to life behind his eyes. "Name your terms." "The truth," I said, stepping closer to him, claiming back some of the power this night had taken from me. "No games, no manipulation. You tell me what you really want from me, and then I'll tell you if I'm brave enough to give it to you." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming him from cold to devastating. "What I want, Evelyn, is to take apart every wall you've built and show you who you are when you're not trying to survive. I want to hear you say my name like a prayer and a curse. I want to ruin you for every other man who'll ever try to touch you." He reached out and traced my lower lip with his thumb. "And I want you to want it too. Not because of money or obligation, but because you finally see yourself the way I see you." "And how do you see me?" I whispered against his touch. Fearless, he said. Even when you're terrified. Even now. Something inside me cracked open. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was relief that my brother would live. Maybe it was the way Dominic looked at me like I was worth $2 million and everything beyond. But I stopped fighting the pull between us and let myself fall. Then take me apart, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside my chest. But know this, Dominic, if you want the real me, you're going to have to show me the real you. No Ice King. No ruthless billionaire. Just the man who's been watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His control slipped, just for a second. I saw it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. You have no idea what you're asking for, he said roughly. Then show me, I challenged. And he did. He closed the distance between us and kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. His mouth was demanding, possessive, nothing like the careful control he showed the world. I kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring 2 years of invisible longing into it, all the times I'd watched him from across the office and wondered what it would be like to matter to someone who mattered so much. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. This changes everything, he said. I know, I whispered back. Your brother's treatment is paid for regardless. Walk away now, and nothing changes at work. I'm not walking away. His hands framed my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. Why? It was the most important question anyone had ever asked me. I could lie, could claim it was still about the money or the obligation. But he'd asked for truth, and I'd promised to give it. Because I've been invisible my whole life, I said quietly. And you see me. Something in his expression softened, became almost tender. I see you, Evelyn. I've always seen you. The night stretched out before us, full of dangerous possibilities and truths that couldn't be taken back. I'd come here to sell something I thought defined me, but somewhere between the auction and this moment, I'd discovered something more valuable than my innocence. I'd discovered my own desire. My own power. My own willingness to take what I wanted instead of always giving everything away. As Dominic led me deeper into the suite, his hand warm and certain in mine, I realized the auction had never been about selling myself at all. It was about finally demanding to be seen, to be valued, to matter. And the winning bidder hadn't bought me. He'd simply been the only one willing to meet my price. Another 15 minutes, gone just like that. If you're already craving the next episode, don't fight it, there's plenty more billionaire chaos where this came from. Hit that follow, and meet me in the next story. Trust me, it only gets juicier from here.